Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your one-stop shop for everything black. Today is Monday, March 28th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, more Democrats called for the recusal of Justice Clarence Thomas from any cases related to the January 6th insurrection over his wife's involvement. Meanwhile, President Biden is proposing a new minimum tax on billionaires, but what does he hope to pay for with that money? Then, scientists believe that crabs and other seafood could have emotions, but will that keep you from dipping that crab leg in some butter?
Plus, everybody hates Chris after the slap heard around the world. What's next? Could Will Smith lose his Oscar? And Donald Glover teams up with Malia Obama, while Childish Gambino says he had to hire the former first daughter.
We have that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
Lawmakers in Washington say U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas should not participate in hearing any cases related to the 2020 election. Senator Amy Klobuchar is one of those calling for Thomas to recuse himself. Klobuchar and others concerned about recent findings that his wife, conservative activist Ginny Thomas, sent text messages to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, backing the effort to overturn the election in favor of Donald Trump. CBS News and the Washington Post revealed more than 24 of those texts last week. But Justice Thomas, he's already participated in 2 election-related cases, despite his wife's direct involvement. A third case could also soon reach the high court. Meanwhile, Justice Thomas was released from the hospital Friday after a week-long stay for what a spokesperson called non-COVID flu-like symptoms. I think that this is going to be very problematic because we've already heard from soon-to-be Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson saying that she would recuse herself from a potential case. She was asked about that because of her position on the school board, I believe it is, or at Harvard. But clearly, a conflict of interest means that there should not be a judge presiding over this, and this is a clear conflict of interest.
Absolutely, a conflict of interest. Not even a small doubt in our minds here. Ginny, the fact that she plotted with that White House to overturn the election, then, like you said, her husband standing by and making sure he was the only no that voted to not have the documents be shown. That is also very, very important to note. And so also the fact that she didn't even feel like what position that your husband holds, the fact that you had no fear at all that this could jeopardize where you stand, where he stands, that is the scary part, that there was no fear at all.
Yeah.
And you know what else is surprising is that the Supreme Court has no ethic rules in place. So you can voluntarily recuse yourself or not. Like you get to decide. And what you said, Demi, 8-1, he did not recuse himself when the January 6th committee brought forth the documents. And so it begs the question, did you know that your wife had those text messages in there, which is why you didn't want to recuse yourself?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Definitely, I think he knew, and a lot more names are going to come. At some point, a lot of people will be exposed through this whole situation, and that's what we want. We want to get to that point. Will it happen before the 2022 midterms, which should definitely happen before 2024, because we know Trump may want to run again. We have to get to the bottom of this, and a lot more people will be exposed for sure.
I mean, it's strange enough that for a Supreme Court justice to have the direct contact information for somebody in the executive wing, the executive wing of the White House, but for a justice's spouse to be directly texting the West Wing, this is clear as day.
And it invalidates everything that he has said about the insurrection from this point on.
Absolutely. President Joe Biden delivering a powerful speech in Poland, telling the world that Vladimir Putin can no longer remain in power.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, for free people refused to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
The Kremlin is pushing back, though, telling Reuters that they are upset about the remarks and added that it's not up to President Biden to say if Putin should stay or go. A White House official later told Fox News that the president's comments were not about a regime change. President Biden maintains that the United States and its allies will do what they can to bring an end to the suffering and destruction in Ukraine. President Biden is known for making off-the-cuff remarks. You ain't black, all those sort of things. And so when he said this, I believed him, and it's not a bad thing. I think millions of Americans believe that Putin should not be in power. And so, it just begs to the question to see what will happen, if anything.
Biden says, like you said, a lot of off-the-cuff remarks. This is not the first time that a representative for him has had to come by and say he didn't mean it this way, even when he called Putin a war criminal. His Jen Psaki, the press secretary, came back and said, he meant that from his heart. That wasn't Joe Biden. At some point, Joe Biden either stand on what you mean or stop saying things that you don't mean. Mean what you say what you mean at this point.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, I don't think he can either. And I think in a perfect world, they would want Biden to be set up like, how radio is, Demi. You have that dump button. So when you say something wrong or you have a guest use a curse word, you can dump it and maybe it never happened. But in this case, it's going to happen every time when he opens his mouth. So I think they're tired of just trying to backtrack and trying to clean up what he's saying. But he really feels this way.
I think that after the last, presidency, it's strange to have an incumbent who is so concerned with tiptoeing around the language and to have a White House that is doing the same behind him, because the last guy said whatever came to his mind.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, lots of things, that he could shoot people on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And he was heavily, voted in again. He lost, but a huge margin voted for him despite that kind of rhetoric. So I think the executive office should just be a little less timid.
But with Trump, I think that Joe Biden is trying so fiercely to try and separate himself from, just spewing language. But also going back to what I was saying is, Joe Biden, it's okay. You're saying what the people of America, what we feel. You're saying what we see. So it's okay to stand firm on what you believe in. It honestly kind of makes you feel like, do we really believe you when you say stuff? Because if you say it and then you take it back.
He called him a butcher. It's an appropriate word, I think, and it provides such an appropriate metaphorical view of what's actually happening. He's butchering lives over there. So
he definitely is.
As the war in Ukraine enters its second month, the war is entering a period where Ukraine is able to fend off Russian advances, and Moscow may attempt to split the nation into two. Russian forces, while making progress in the south, have not captured Kyiv and have been pushed back as they try to advance. Military experts say it's evident that it's not going as Russia initially intended, but they are unsure how long this conflict is going to last. The war has come with horrible costs. Thousands are dead on both ends, while 3.5 million people have fled the country. Russian and Ukrainian officials met today in peace talks.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is winning in the court of public opinion. An average of 5 major polls say 53% of Americans support Jackson's confirmation, with only 26% opposing her. If those numbers hold up, Jackson will be the most popular nominee for the Supreme Court since Chief Justice John Roberts in 2005. Next up for Jackson is a vote in the Senate Judiciary Committee that's slated for April 4th. Well, when she makes that out of the committee, as expected she will, a confirmation vote from the full Senate could come April 8th.
The Senate Judiciary Committee is expected to vote on Jackson's nomination 1 week from today. And while that plays out in committee, Democrats, they are not sitting by idly, advancing several of President Biden's nominees to lifetime federal court seats. In fact, so far, 8 of Biden's judicial nominees have been confirmed. One of them is Allison Nathan, who will sit on the Second Circuit. Nathan is the second openly gay woman to serve in a U.S. appeals court. In all, the Biden White House has added 56 judges to the federal bench. That's more than any other president at this point in their term. And so one of the things that they were talking about prior to Biden even getting the chance to nominate Judge Jackson was that he has already made so many nominations that in many ways that is a long-lasting change for courts that may have more immediate impact than the Supreme Court does, because of course the Supreme Court is that top last layer of appeals that you get to. These judges sit on those intermediary benches that hear cases more regularly.
I just love how Ketanji Brown Jackson has risen above all of the mean comments, has risen above the ridiculous questioning, has literally stayed so poised and so beautiful, inspired so many people. And so that goes again with what she was asked, what do you want to tell the young Americans who are watching your confirmation hearing right now? And she said to persevere, and that is exactly, she's practicing what she preached, because that is exactly what she did, is persevere through all of the ridiculousness.
Yeah. You know, Seth, to your point, I'm really glad to see that Joe Biden is doing this. I don't know if you remember, but you used to wake up and hear that Trump appointed like all of these judicial appointments in the middle of the night. You'd wake up and you'd hear these things. And so for Biden to be setting time to make sure that he is setting the courts long after he leaves a lasting legacy, because these are the judges that are going to decide millions of cases, you know, the ones that are really going to affect the people, you know, and so you want to make sure that we have someone in there to counterbalance all the appointments from Trump.
And the judges that could rise to the next Supreme Court opening as well.
Exactly. And he's sticking by his promise. He wants to make sure that his priority is to make sure it's diversity involved in this, right?
Absolutely.
He wants to make sure he mix it up from all ways across the board. And I love the fact he's doing that. And he's keeping to his promise, which he said he's going to do that, but we're still waiting on other things that happen too. I hate to bring up those things too. George Floyd Policing Act, things like that. Still on the list of things to do, but this is a very powerful moment that he's doing.
It's really a shame that people have got a front row seat to watching a black woman be just dragged through the mud throughout this process. She's going to rise and persevere, of course, but it's just really sad that people have enjoyed this moment.
Enjoyed it, but I think it's important for people to see it, because watching her temperament in those moments shows you why she's been so successful as a judge, and proves that no matter how tense or toxic the argument can get over a situation, abortion rights, affirmative action, whatever reaches the Supreme Court, that she has the temperament to assess it from a neutral perspective.
I love that.
Very good point, Seth. President Biden's dip in approval ratings may have been the result of parents losing their child tax credit payments. New research shows the president's approval ratings were 4% higher among parents who got the payments when they started in July. But when the payments ended in January, Biden's approval dipped as well, even though he pushed for the Senate to extend the payments. The American Rescue Plan boosted the maximum payment to $3,600 a month for parents for kids under 6 and for $3,000 for kids under 16, reducing child poverty to lower levels.
President Biden is expected to propose a minimum tax of 20% on households. Now, this is worth more than $100 million as part of his upcoming budget request. It's called the Billionaire Minimum Income Tax Proposal, which the White House is set to unveil today. It calls for a tax on the stated incomes of the country's 700 richest people. There would also be a tax on their unrealized gains on stock holdings and other forms of wealth as well. Now, the administration reports that plan could raise up the $360 billion over 10 years.
Vice President Kamala Harris has a new press secretary. It's Kristen Allen. Allen recently served as National Press Secretary for the Department of Health and Human Services COVID response team. Allen served as Deputy National Press Secretary and African American Media Director for Harris' 2020 presidential campaign.
A jury in Denver is ordering the city and the county to pay 12 people assaulted by police during George Floyd protests a total of $14 million. It is the first case in the nation to ever go to trial that accused police officers of misconduct during the protests. Protesters say the cops sprayed them with pepper spray and fired beanbags at them, causing serious injuries. The jury found that police department failed to properly train officers who violated the plaintiffs' First and Fourth Amendment rights. Attorneys say the case could open the door for more lawsuits like this around the country.
An effort to strip the names of government-owned buildings in Washington, D.C. honoring slave owners appears to have stalled before truly beginning. Mayor Muriel Bowser put a task force together to study the idea of renaming dozens of schools, parks, and public buildings controlled by the District of Columbia. But so far, nothing has come of it. The task force disbanded before the report could even be done. Critics say it's an example of government ambition that falls short of its idea. About 50 facilities would have been renamed if the city council would have approved the move.
The Tennessee NAACP says it's concerned with a state official who was taking over the finances of a small black town. Now, Jason Mumpower, the Republican comptroller, says that he will oversee the Masons Tennessee's budget because it has been poorly managed. The town owes almost $600,000 to its water and sewer fund. The comptroller will have the power to approve or block any spending of $100 or more. The city's vice mayor, Virginia Rivers, who is African American, says what the comptroller is doing is, quote, akin to a hostile takeover. The historically black town of only 1,300 homes had been led by white officials until 2015.
2 Louisville teachers are being reassigned after a 9-minute video shows them yelling at kids and using the N-word twice. The video, which was shared on Facebook, shows 2 teachers at the Carruthers Middle School chastising the class for being disruptive. The teachers also used other profanities as they dressed down the students. The school's principal says the incident is being taken very seriously.
A black South Carolina police officer shot and killed a black man after a high-speed chase and told investigators the man had something in his hand but wasn't sure what that was. Cassandra Dollar did not realize the dashboard camera had recorded the incident, though, and the video shows Dollard slip on the ground with her weapon out as she orders Robert Jr. Langley to stay in the car. When he gets out, she shoots him. She was fired after the incident and charged with voluntary manslaughter. Now she faces 30 years in prison if convicted. The 52-year-old officer worked for 6 different police agencies. She's been fired by 3 of them because of poor performance, showing that there's a need for a police officer registry.
An African-American family in Southern California, they are suing the Hemet Police Department after they say officers abused them. Cell phone video of the March 2021 incident show cops from the Hemet Police Department's gang unit arresting Ryan Gaddison, who had arrived at his fiance's house. Cops say they pulled over Gaddison for not having a front license plate. Attorneys for the family say Gaddison refused to allow police to search his car. The family says that's when the violence started. Gaddison's fiance, Mariah Hereford, and her mother, Monet, say the cops knocked the phone out of their hand as they were trying to record the incident. They also accuse the officers of attacking their dogs. Gaddison and Hereford, they have filed a federal lawsuit against the officers of the Hemet Police Department.
Los Angeles County's sheriff is denying his department is trying to cover up an incident where one of his officers knelt on the neck of an inmate for 3 minutes. The video, which was obtained by the LA Times newspaper, was shot in 2021. Now, it shows the inmate restrained on the floor by deputies. The video shows one deputy with his knee on the man's neck. The LA Times story says the sheriff's department was trying to hide the incident. Sheriff Alex Villanueva says the story is an attempt by his political opponents to sabotage his campaign. The sheriff says a deputy in the video has been relieved of duty.
A documentary about the first and only woman drafted by an NBA team took home the Oscar for Best Short Subject Documentary last night. The Queen of Basketball. It's the story of Lucia Harris, a pioneer of women's basketball. The movie, produced by Shaquille O'Neal and Steph Curry, who are also now officially Oscar winners. But the director last night used his acceptance speech to make a call to action to President Biden about another female basketball player. Take a listen.
One last thing. President Biden, bring Brittany Griner home. Thank you.
WNBA star Griner was arrested at a Moscow airport after vape cartridges were reportedly found in her luggage. She's still being detained. We're going to have a breakdown of the other big moments from the Oscars coming up later in the show.